So laying down on your backs, taking a moment perhaps to feel a sense of relief or enjoy that moment where you let go of everything and you let the work of the day flow through and the floor take over to carry your own body. And maybe you start sensing that your breath gets a little bit more settled. Marek asked you earlier, what about your mind? What about your state of mind? Is there something that perhaps you need to let go from that first lesson? Have you already moved on? Are you able to be fully present to yourself here and now? Good. And as you tune in and start sensing the contact that your body makes with the floor, see if you can more specifically sense the back body into the floor, especially the pelvis, and maybe feeling which part has a greater pressure onto the floor. Is it one side of the pelvis? Is it right in the middle? And you start identifying those two corners, those two sides, those two pelvic halves of your pelvis, and how they might be organized a little bit differently, helped by the feedback of the floor. And see if you can identify two other corners of your torso, the two shoulders. So again, finding them if you're in your own sensorial map, and then feeling how they are relating to the floor. And as you feel those four corners, the two shoulders and the two hips, see if you can start connecting them, almost tracing, that would be a rectangle if we were perfectly geometrical, but in our case, it's more of a parallelogram. So there is a sense of one side of the torso that may feel a little longer, one side of the torso that may feel a little shorter, or one hip that may feel closer to one shoulder. And see if as this shape of the middle of yourself, this content of the middle of yourself is getting a little bit more outlined in your sensorial map, you could start feeling which corner out of those fours might feel the heaviest between the two hips and the two shoulders, which corner may feel that it's even perhaps stirring the whole shape of the torso into the floor. And it can be one or two corners, right? You might feel maybe a sense of diagonal or one-sided feeling. And in opposition to that, is there one corner that feels like it's getting peeled off the floor a little bit, getting lighter, getting pulled away from the floor a little bit? And so you start to have this 3D image of your torso. Good. And now see how the spine interacts with this shape of yourself. Is it a perfect straight line crossing in the middle? Is there a sense of bias to the right or to the left where the content of the torso might be pouring? And how about the exit that is making your neck and then your head, the place where your head is resting? Is it perfectly in the middle of your container, or is it a bit to the right or to the left? Good. Nice. And from there, please roll onto your right side. Make yourself comfortable onto your right side. That's when, if you need head pads, feel free to use them and reevaluate the height. And you want to have your two legs stacked, one on top of the other, and draw the knees up a little bit as if you were sitting on a 90-degree angle chair. So like a soft chair, but so the femur comes out of the hips at 90 degree, and then the lower legs comes out at 90 degree as well, yeah? And two arms are going to be lengthened in front of you, palms into palm. The two arms long in front of you, the two palms touching. The right palm into the left palm, and it's in front of you so you can look at it. Where your nose is pointing right in front of you, yeah? That's right. From there, you're going to start lengthening forward into the world, the left arm, lengthening the left arm forward, reaching, and then coming back to neutral again. So that's the first movement we're exploring together here, lengthening the left hand, the left palm. So you're sliding on top of your right palm, right? And of course, what you want to sense with that reach is how is this affecting the more proximal part? How is this affecting the shoulder and the ribs and the spine? So how far can you track this movement, right? The instruction was reach the left hand forward, but I'm asking you, how far can you follow within yourself, how it's altering your sense of self? And if that's helpful, you can ponder your quadrilateral. You can bring back this image of the four corners and think, oh, how is that completely changing the architecture and the relationship of those four corners, right? And can you feel that top left corner, that left shoulder is actually kind of going forward and down a little bit, right? And how does that affect the orientation of your chest and your sternum? Can you feel that if you let it spread, if you let it move, if you allow it within yourself, the sternum will also start moving a bit forward and start lightly orienting to the floor, and it's very, very small. Yeah, very, very small. And well, the sternum is attached to the ribs, which are attached to the spine, and so on and so forth. So from there, you can see how we can start to warm up the whole body, in fact, to that reaching forward. Good. Now, as you retrieve your hand, coming back, see if you can retrieve your left hand even more. So you start grazing the inside of your right arm, the inside of your right elbow, and coming a little bit closer to your right armpit. That's right. And then you go back forward and lengthen the arm forward, overtaking the right palm. And then coming back to the back and opening the front of the body a little bit, tracking the sternum. And this time you feel the sternum is started to orient to the ceiling, right? So again, the instruction is using the arm, the hands, but really it's about something more central there. That's right. And can you feel what that does to your ribs? Can you feel that your ribs are asked to rotate a little bit backward into the backward space? And could you trace the inner right arm all the way to the front of the chest? Is that available? And that's not a question for me, that's a question you're asking your own self, your own body, the own feedback that you have. And for some of you, it might be, for some of you, it might not. So you feel how far you can go without changing the quality of the movement, right? Because the question alone of how far you can go is not necessarily useless, but not what we are after in Feldenkrais. Our question is, and always the caveat is the quality of the movement. If there is any thickening, any dampening, anything that is interfering, that means there it is. That's the moment where you should backtrack. Good, good. Now leave that be, rest a moment onto your side, soften your elbows. Just take a moment to feel what it is like to lay on that right side. Is it comfortable? Is there something that you could adjust to feel a little better? How about the feeling of the breath in the right side of the lungs? Now from there, you're going to place the left palm onto the floor in front of you with the elbow bent and oriented towards the ceiling. So it's almost like a push-up position, except you're laying on your side. You want to play around with the height of the palm that is landing on the floor. It might have to be above the right arm. It might have to be below the right arm. It might have to be on the right arm, right? Depending on the next movement. However, I invite you to have your fingers more or less pointed up towards your head, towards the direction of the head. Yeah, still the hands on the floor. Now from there, See if you can start lengthening the left elbow a little bit forward, lengthening the left elbow in the forward space. Yeah. So if you remember the first movement we did of lengthening the left hand, this movement is his cousin. It's the same idea and the same mechanism within ourselves, except we added a constraint, the constraint of the left palm touching the floor, right? And again, play around with the height. The first one you pick might not be the one that's most effective and easy for you to find the easier path. Yeah, good. And see how you can allow the wrist to soften so that the elbow can move in the forward space. And you feel, is that bringing a sense of similar sensation of rolling, feeling the sternum, feeling the ribs. Perhaps some of you might tune in with the right side of the body into the floor, noticing that there is a slight shift. There is a slight shift. That's right. And where is the breath in all this? Are you still breathing softly, easily? Good. Now see if you can start moving the elbow forward, and as you retrieve your elbow, you start moving your upper arm backward, your left shoulder backward. That's right. And you feel, how can you find that trajectory of the arm that is almost perpendicular to your body? I think you would want to move it just a little bit here. And maybe on top of your hand, let's try here and see if you can guide the elbow. Go ahead, forward. So I'll help you, okay? Moving the elbow forward. Yeah, I know it's a funny configuration. You're okay. You're not going to break, okay? That's right. That's the direction right there. Good. And see if you can be very specific as you retrieve the elbow to move backward. There is a moment where the chest is not moving, but it's almost like the upper arm is plugging into your shoulder girdle, into the scapula, riding the curves of the ribs, and only then the ribs will start rotating. It's a very small movement and it's a very subtle distinction that I'm asking you to do. So see if you can take a moment to feel how clear you are with that movement, so it doesn't become a whole cylinder roll back and forth, front and back, right? That's right. Now, as you keep going, moving the elbow forward and back, see if you could start allowing the leg, the left leg, to follow the movement of the upper arm. So there is no lifting, the knees are staying together, the legs are staying resting one on top of the other. The upper arm is moving forward and back and staying parallel to the ground, right? So could the left femur move forward and back, matching a parallel movement to your upper arm? That's right. So that means the knees are not getting picked up and lifted up to the ceiling, right? Come back here. I think you want to be a little bit more forward there. And so the movement of the elbow, you want to bring your head a little bit forward. That's right, there you are. You'll be more comfortable there. And the elbow is moving forward here and then backward there. That's right. And so then if you let the leg match, that's all it is. Very simple, in fact, right? Easier than what you thought. Good. And so see if you can allow, and not actively do, but allow the hip and the knee to match the movement of the shoulder and the elbow, right? And kind of warm up to the idea that, in fact, this movement could be a whole body movement. Now, as you go on, see if you could let the leg take over. So the left knee is reaching forward and it's pulling the side of the pelvis, rotating the spine, letting the ribs rotate, and all of a sudden the left shoulder follow, and you put a little bit more weight onto your left hand forward. So for untrained eyes, it might look like the same movement, right? But again, we're after subtlety here. That's right. That's right. Very good, everyone. Very nice. Good. That's enough. Leave that be. Let it go. Roll onto your back. Remove the pads if you had placed pads underneath your head and you know you don't need them laying on your back, so you're not compressed forward. And take a moment here as you lay onto your back, just to feel, sense where you are, noticing how the whole left side feels. Noticing how it compared to the right side, and the experience might be very different for each of us, right? We worked with one side, the left side, but at the same time, the right side was the supportive side that almost got a slight compression in a way and a slight massage. So we can get some sense of expansion and release and opening on both sides, right? Good. And how does that feel in the length of your right arm and your left arm? And your right leg and your left leg? And are the left limbs feeling a little bit more, perhaps awaken, long, yielding? Good. And please slowly roll onto your left side. So organizing yourself in a similar fashion onto the left side. Again, option to double up on the same side if you feel like laying on the left side isn't an option today. So attending to your sense of comfort above all. Now bringing the knees at 90 degrees. So, and the feet are also at 90 degrees of the knees, like sitting in this comfortable chair. 2 arms long in front of you with the palms into each other. Started to lengthen the top arm, the right arm forward a little bit. That's right. And coming back to neutral. And some of you may know where this is going, but see if you can do it with a very fresh, genuine eye, so that you don't miss out, because the experience on this second side might feel very different. So lengthening the right arm forward. That's right. And feeling what places can I find to soften? Is there something perhaps around my bottom arm, around my left shoulder that is pushing or tightening or squeezing or pinching that is preventing me from feeling that roll sensation forward? Is there something in my neck or in my head that somehow is interfering with the movement of my arm and my intent? Good. And as you let the movement grow, see if you can start retrieving yourself and grazing the inside of the left arm. And it can be done in many, many small increments, right? So lengthening forward and little by little grazing the inside. Good. And as you go on, you come back a little further, feeling maybe the inside of the left elbow or the inside of the left armpit. That's right. Good. And see if you can start feeling how that movement may be relating to your sternum, your chest, your ribs. That's right. So the arm is moving the whole torso. Yeah. The same way you're going forward and it's affecting the whole shape of the 4 corners, if you remember. Then the same way when you're moving back, right? This right shoulder is steering the whole shape a little bit into the back space. That's right. That's right. And you go as far as it feels good. So maybe perhaps some of you start having the feeling that this right elbow could push a back door that is behind you. And it may or may not be the case. That's right. Good. Very nice, everyone. Stay on your side, leave that be, and you're going to place your right palm in front of you onto the floor or onto your left arm with the right elbow more or less to the ceiling, and see if you can start feeling how to lengthen, orient that right elbow forward. Finding the lengthening the same way you reached with your hand earlier, right? But it's a funny thing to think, oh, how can I initiate the movement from my elbow? It's so unusual, right? We're so habituated to grab everything and reach and touch and bring to ourselves with our fingers and our hands. So could you make it just as simple and maybe familiar, reaching with the right elbow forward and then retrieving yourself and started to explore the back space, feeling again how there is a moment where you decide the arm is going back and the chest hasn't received the memo yet, right? So if I take a picture, there is a micro movement where the shoulder is getting plugged in and move into the back space, and only then the chest follow. Not to say that you have to stop anything, but make sure that you can appreciate each and every single little step that are a compound of the movement. That's right, that's right. And you go back and forth, forward and back, and see if as you warm up to this forward and back movement of your elbow, you can start allowing the right leg to match in a parallel movement the upper body. That's right, that's right. And that is in fact also allowing yourself to roll across the left side, to find that the left side can be your supportive side. That's right. Still noticing how the breath can remain easy, unaffected, simple. It's only Feldenkrais. Yes. Good. Now see if you can feel how perhaps the right leg can start taking over the movement of forward and back. Very good. Feeling how now the lower body is leading and the upper body is following, and that's not always that easy either, right? We rarely apprehend the word with our feet, unless you're a dancer. That's right, that's right. Very good. Very nice, everyone. Leave that be, stay on your side for a moment. Just breathe there. You can relax your arms and you can change position if you feel like this is not a position where you're able to fully rest. And see if you can appreciate the sense of the breath within the whole right side of the ribs. The feeling of which direction are the ribs able to expand. Is it more front, more side, more back, more up, more down? All of the above. Good. And from there, you're going to place your right arm onto your right side body so that the fingers are going to drip by your buttock, but you want to rest your arm and not hold it. Yeah. Good. And from there, see if you can start moving the right shoulder and the right hip forward together, like you're rolling a little bit. And then a little bit backward altogether. So it's like you're a giant cylinder, right? And literally everything is rolling together forward and together backward, right? Good. And you have the feedback underneath your hand if you're not sure if your pelvis is on board, right? That's right. That's right. And it's like a whole rolling forward and back. Good. Very nice. Very good, everyone. Now from there, could you, on purpose, fixate the pelvis and keep on moving the shoulder forward and back? So the pelvis is almost your stabilizing point, your stabilized part, but the right shoulder has still the ability to move forward and back. Of course, you have to kind of scale down perhaps the range of the right shoulder now that we have isolated one part of the body, right? And can you feel how much more movement it is requesting in the ribs now that the pelvis is not following, right? Good, very nice. Now see if you can fixate the right shoulder and move only the hip forward and back. And again, it's the story of, for most of us, it's much easier to lead with the upper body. So the first variation, then fixate the upper body and lead with the lower body, with the hip. So take a moment to think about it, because that means that if I take a picture, at some point your right shoulder is behind your right hip, and at some point your right shoulder should be in front of your right hip. Yet the shoulder is not moving. Yeah, it's just relative to it. as if the right shoulder were to be the fixed point. So how can you find that? How can you organize that? That's right. That's right. Very good. And now come back quiet onto your side. Breathe there for a moment and think. Could you move simultaneously your right shoulder forward and your right hip backward? And I see you're very eager to do it, so go for it, try it out. So right shoulder forward and right hip backward. How can those two movements coexist? It's a funny sort of thing. It's not something you'll do every day, yeah? Good. And now could you reverse that, moving the right shoulder backward and the right hip forward? That's right, right shoulder backward, right hip forward. Again, some kind of funny configuration. And what happened to your neck and your head in all this? Is it going with the pelvis? Is it going with the shoulder? Does it not know what to do because it's confused and it's fine? And maybe it's a part of you and you're confused and it's fine too. Now, see if you can alternate. One time the shoulder move forward and the hip move back. They meet in the middle and the shoulder keeps going back and the hip keeps going forward. That's right. That's right. And if you recall, that's a bit of the tricky variation Marek did sitting earlier, where the upper body was going one way, the lower body was going the other way. So how is that now that you're laying down and you can just track the movement of the girdle? That's right. That's right. Are you still breathing? Good. Good. Couple of times, bring shoulder and hips together, forward, together, back in this kind of more soft, almost lulling, soothing, forward and back, and see if you can start adding a little bit of speed, a little bit of rocking, smaller and faster and softer, a little bit of momentum, and front and back and front and back and front and back. And befriending yourself again if you lost that feeling, that connection. Yes? Good, good, everyone. Leave that be, let it go. Please roll onto your backs. Very nice. Girdle isolation, everyone. Good. Nice. And taking a moment to sense and feel where you are. Noticing the length of the torso. Noticing how is your quadrilateral laying onto the floor. If you recall at the beginning when I asked you, is one or two corners a little bit heavy, a little bit more stirring the shape? How is the feeling of it? How is the geometry of it now? And how about the sense of the breathing, of the breath in those four corners? Are they filling in a little bit more equally, a little bit more deeply? What is your sense of comfort now laying onto the floor? Are you laying down as a comfortable person now? Good. And when you're ready, you can slowly roll onto one side and make your way up to sit. And very slowly gathering yourself with the same care, the same kindness to yourself. Finding your 2 feet, but there is no rush. You can linger onto one side if that feels good, but very slowly you organize so that you can cope with gravity, finding the 2 feet onto the floor as you rise. Nobody wants to stand up anymore. It feels so good to be on the floor. Good, good, good. No rush. Just on your own time, getting acquainted with what it feels like to cope with gravity, taking a moment to feel the feet onto the floor. And we haven't done anything with the feet, but perhaps you can already sense there is something about the weight and the width of the feet into the floor, that's a little different. And how about the sense of your quadrilateral and your four corners now that you're upright? Is the breath still available in all directions? And how much effort or ease does that cost you to stand now? Good. And you can walk around the room just again for the sake of sensing through walking what it feels like. Is there any shifts, any differences, anything you like a little bit more about yourself? Anything you're surprised about? Good. Thank you so much for coming, everyone. And I think we'll leave you with all your sensations to digest. You want to add?
I have nothing to add. Thank you for coming once more. We hope to see you and have a good night.
Thank you.
And we hang around. If there are any questions, our staff will hang around for a few more minutes.